As we begin the second part of Encounter at Farpoint, the Hood is bidding farewell, so naturally Picard has the message sent over, Bon voyage, mon ami. The question was brought up last time, why is it that the French captain has an English accent? The answer, of course, is Hollywood cast this role. Hollywood has a very interesting view of the world. There's America, and then there's miscellaneous. And so long as you're in miscellaneous, your accent doesn't really matter. It can be whatever. I mean, in Hollywood, we have had a New Zealander playing an English captain, an Englishman playing a French captain, a Frenchman playing a Scotsman playing a Soviet Lithuanian, a Soviet Ukrainian playing a French woman, another Frenchman playing an Italian, which of course means that at some point an Italian is going to be playing Kevin Bacon. Q shows up in response to Picard's pointless dicking around, causing Worf to leap to his feet, phaser at the ready. He's compensating because, as you probably noted last time, he stood right next to Tasha Yar while even she did jack shit, and he had the further indignity of being told to command the saucer section after the separation. Clearly, an assault on the size of his Klingon penis. However, this is not Worf's shining moment regardless, as Picard notes all he'd do is shoot a hole in the screen, which unless it operates under voodoo doll logic, that's going to have fewer upsides compared to the downside of not seeing where we're going.
You reacted fast, Mr. Worf, but futilely.
I will learn to do better, sir.
Hard to see how it could go any worse. You're absolutely right, sir. Soon I shall learn not to shoot our own equipment. Just remember, we're in the werewolf era when one of his important character aspects was being a danger to himself and others. Anyway, Q tells Picard maybe quit farting around and get this job done. Well, Picard will not be cowed.
If we're going to be damned, let's be damned for what we really are.
Old strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for them. Riker starts talking to Picard in his ready room in an overexcited manner about everything he saw down on the planet. They've got tons of geothermal energy, but not much else. Certainly not the construction materials that are seen here. Riker figures they must be trading away the excess energy, and naturally, there's only one culprit who would be interested. Decepticons. After this, we have the first run-in between Riker and Deanna Troi, and she's talking to him through her mind, all the while giving him a look that, as a male, I've been on the receiving end of far more often than I'd like. It's the, you've done something wrong. See if you can figure it out, you Neanderthal. So, time to check with Groppler Zorn. Grapple. Who's unhappy that Picard has brought a Beta Z here, so Troi has to explain not to worry. Her mind reading is strictly set to plot convenience. So Picard asks that the Bandy maybe consider helping build bases elsewhere, and Zorn's like, no thanks. We like having just the one. And when pushed, says, if Starfleet doesn't want to respect their wishes, there's always the Ferengi. Man, that gets funnier the more time passes. Show the Ferengi around this place, they'll be stealing the light bulbs during the tour. Well, Troi switches on now.
Pain. Loneliness. Terrible loneliness. Despair.
And boredom. Don't leave that one out. Thankfully, Troy's abilities were dialed down a bit as the series went on. Given Picard's excess grouchiness in the early episodes as well, I'm pretty sure that isn't a coincidence. I sense pain. Yes, mine, having to listen to my crybaby therapist break down every time someone on this ship stubs their toe. Please, unless it's an emotion I actually give a damn about, keep your trap shut, so maybe I won't pull out what little hair I have left. Zorn denies knowing what she's talking about, so they adjourn and Riker needs to locate Data, so this ensign helps out.
Tell me the location of Commander Data.
Lieutenant Commander Data, now located in Holodeck Area 4J.
Data, now located next to the food court for all your cat poetry needs. Finding him in the holodeck sets up Data's being more human character arc while exploring the concept of the holodeck. Riker tells Data that he's read his file, then has to ask whether or not his rank is honorary. Good to know that even in the future, people will just stick with the cliff notes. Wesley comes in solely so he can fall into the water and then look sheepishly at the grouchy old captain later on. Just because people have asked me about this a lot, I'll just mention briefly about the water thing. Yeah, holographic stuff can't leave the holodeck. However, it's more than likely that the holodeck isn't just holograms. If you're going to eat an apple, for instance, it makes more sense to just replicate an apple rather than try to perfectly imitate it in every way, including taste. So the water is probably just replicated water and then done away with when the program ends. The same cannot be said of Wesley.
There's a low-gravity gymnasium, too. It'd be hard to get bored on this ship.
But by God, will we try.
But Captain Picard is a pain, isn't he?
Your father liked him very much. Great explorers are often lonely. No chance to have a family.
Or pay child support, son of a bitch. Down on the planet, the 5 of them decide to go Scooby-Doo and split up to search the station, but not before Geordi gets a chance to do a short little disco routine. That leads us into some weird tunnels, and word that Troi, thankfully, has not been using her empathic powers.
I'm sorry, Counselor, but you must. We need more information.
Oh, you bastard. While Troi continues to destroy our will to live, Wesley then comes in to kick it over the goal line. Picard is annoyed at the mere sight of him. Insert your own joke here, they're all good, but mellows at the sight of Dr. Crusher. Maybe he should see about relaxing his rules and let the child onto the bridge, just this once.
Perimeter alert, Captain.
Wesley!
I'm sorry.
Wes, you shouldn't have touched
Get
me.
off the bridge.
That ended better than I thought it would. Saving us from any more of that is the arrival of a mysterious alien ship that, like all mysterious alien ships, refuses to answer hails to maintain the mystery.
Raise all shields. Phasers at ready.
Aye, sir. Oh, God damn it. Grappler has no idea who this is, but it shines a purple light on the Enterprise, indicating that they've been scanned, very likely by Prince. The ship starts shooting up the Bandy City, causing $1s of dollars in damage to the place. The team finds their way out of the tunnels.
Don't! If you should be hurt!
What, are you saying you've got a weeping gear beyond what we've seen? God help us all. Someone who has a reason to.
Enterprise, help us, please!
Tune that down.
How am I supposed to give a greeting to that ship over there over the sounds of its screaming victims? After Riker and Data check in, Picard tells them to go bring Grappler here, against his will if necessary, in order to get some answers. In the meantime, Picard figures maybe they should do something about the carnage they are passively witnessing, and orders phasers locked on, prompting the arrival of Q. He treats this as savagery, driving Picard up the wall, because treating others as being uncivilized by comparison is his entire Season 1 character arc. He doesn't want anyone else horning in on his turf. Below, Riker and Data find Grappler hiding under a table, crying, which admittedly is what you probably would be doing if someone was attacking you and your new allies were standing there watching them do it. He insists that he doesn't know who that ship is, despite him being the point of contact for all alien visitors. If someone has a reason to kick their asses, he likely would know who or why, if not both. In fact, they transport him away, resulting in a sense of satisfaction, Troi notes. Q's interference, though, while taunting their failure, the omnipotent version of, why you hitting yourself, why you hitting yourself, that gets in the way here. So yeah, Grappler's kidnapped, Q is threatening summary judgment, and there's a menacing ship out there. You know what this calls for? Perhaps going down to see Dr. Crusher and apologizing to her. So that's exactly what Picard does. He's that kind of a leader, damn it, one who knows what his priorities are. Getting laid. Anyway, in the process of apologizing, he manages to offend her repeatedly, which I think none of us are surprised by. Riker leads an away team over to the alien ship, and they find the corridors are just like the ones that are under Farpoint. Weirder, there's no signs of equipment or power generation, and just being here seems to be turning Troi rabid. They eventually find the Grappler himself, begging and pleading pitifully while he is being tortured. Well, obviously our enlightened crew witnesses this atrocity and figured now's a great time to ask him a few routine questions. Until, finally, when we have some free time in our schedule, we could maybe free him from his endless torment. They do so using their ladies' razor phasers. Well, the ship does not like that, and that's when the plots collide as Q returns yet again and begins interfering yet again. He says the time is up and won't allow them to be transported back. He makes himself comfortable. I was really expecting a throwdown to follow. I mean, look at those two back there. Those are stunt performers if I have ever seen them. Well, our heroes in Zoidberg are sent back, and Q tries to take credit for it, Actually, though, it was the alien ship. They put the pieces together. The Bandy didn't build Farpoint Station. They used the mate of this alien in order to configure itself into a form so the Federation would come out here, want to stay, and of course, be someone to buy their cloth while they were glowered at. Well, they're going to help that out, and just the idea of helping is apparently enough, because the ship outside turns into a giant space jellyfish. And the energy beam used on Farpoint turns it into another space jellyfish. They do the largest display of public affection as they hold tentacles. Yeah, get a pocket dimension, you two.
A feeling of great joy and gratitude.
Yes, from me, because it's almost over. So with that, Q's test is passed and he leaves, but implying that he might be back. With that, the crew gets ready to depart and fly off into 7 years that, frankly, will prove to be a hell of a lot better than this was. Post-episode follow-up. Annoying character is not easy this week. Picard was as ornery and arrogant as he is on his worst day. Tasha Yar overreacts every time a minor crisis appears, while also standing there when an alien intrudes on the ship. Worf lives down to the nickname of Microbrain, and we are introduced to Wesley Crusher. But even if you take all that put together, it cannot overcome Troi, with not only her relentless emoting, but that it is so long and she has to say everything at least twice, like the guy Johnny Two Times from Goodfellas. It doesn't add to the atmosphere at all. It makes C-SPAN feel like extreme sports. We have a like unto an amoeba award for Q for having power so beyond us he is borderline omnipotent. Also a You Can Go Home Again for the reproduction of a post-apocalyptic court of horrors. Final score for Encounter at Farpoint in its entirety is 3 out of 10, but unquestioningly the first half is what helps pull this episode up from where it could have really dropped if not for Q's presence. This episode is horribly paced and it's badly performed. It's not helped by what people call early installment weirdness. That's when things at the start of a series are very much not compatible with the way things eventually become. One example would be the patrician in Terry Pratchett's Discworld, who is just so absolutely unlike himself that there was speculation for a time that it was someone else. Early Batman actually carried a gun, something unimaginable for what the character became. Sometimes at the start, you don't quite know what you're doing with things, and weirdness is the result. Some of these are unimportant, of course, like the position of Data and the helmsman. The need to use the wall panel in order to find people is another one. The sliding dots on the wall for direction. Picard's desk changes. It starts with more wood to it, but then becomes kind of more just wood trim. It only stood out to me because I'd become so accustomed to seeing Janeway's IKEA monstrosity that wood grain stood out. One thing that I'm pleased didn't even make it this far was the idea that huge areas of the ship are filled with water so that dolphins and whales could be on board. That would have been so dated. The silly reason for this was apparently they were going to help with navigation. We recently saw this when the gag was delivered on in Lower Decks. The idea that dolphins and whales are used to traveling in 3 dimensions. Except with that kind of logic, why go to all the trouble of having all that water on board and huge animals when you could get the same benefit from bees? After all, they move in 3 dimensions too, and you get to have yummy honey. Plus, you could do the episode where Riker eats all the honey and gets stuck in Rabbit's house. But perhaps what most contributes to early installment weirdness are the personalities and the performances that stood out the most. Denise Crosby chewing up the scenery, Maureen Surtees' PMS kidney stone performance, Picard's excess hostility and bile towards his own crew, plus Jonathan Frakes mugging at the camera. And while nothing worthy of complaining about, but nevertheless I should note, Spiner's presentation of Data sometimes feels extremely different from the Data that we know. I'm not sure how much of this is the result of growing pains. I do think that Corey Allen, who directed this and quite a few other unpleasant Trek episodes, might have had a hand in it. Will Wheaton told an anecdote about him being brought down to be impressed by Picard. He controls the sky! And really strongly leaned into it. I mean, it's just that one person overacting, yeah, that happens. But so many of them? to such a degree. Of course, poor Will Wheaton, again, having to carry the weight of the Wesley Crusher. Could have just gotten away with being a child in this episode, but then, of course, there has to be Gene's insistence on him being that Wunderkind Übermensch that will stain his character, leading to the completion of his arc in Journey's End. Directed by Corey, he controls the sky, Allen. However, credit where it's due, looking back on this episode, Michael Dorn actually really delivers. As much as I make fun of Worf, Dorn's performance in this one was incredibly strong. It felt like he treated every line and moment he'd been given as significant. I'm not even sure that's the right word that I mean. It's not that others were phoning it in at any point. There was something about the way Dorn performed that made me appreciate what he was giving it. Leaving aside the humor of him wanting to blast the screen, Worf became kind of the opposite of annoying character. Dorn made me want to see more of him. I'm sorry, I'm babbling, I know. It's just I'm having trouble articulating the source of what I see, heard, and felt. It's not exactly that he was stealing scenes or anything, so much as he just seemed to stand large in them, if you follow. Finally, one point that has changed since I did this originally is that this was remastered, and it does help at least lend authenticity to the episode. The alien ship was far more impressive in this version without really being changed, and the Enterprise felt more like a ship and less like a model. It might be controversial, but I'm actually fine with these improvements. Every once in a while, I actually think, I don't remember this being that good, and then I remember, oh yes, they fixed it. But I have to remember that they fixed it, see. My reaction isn't that I'm pulled out by seeing it's changed. In other words, it fits the vision so well that the thought is, great job, rather than, they've Lucased it. Ultimately, Encounter at Farpoint was a stumble, and it's only the role of John Delancey as Q that salvages anything. It turns what would have been a thoroughly unimpressive first step into something significant. You can't save the whole story, but part 1 is definitely better than part 2 thanks to that.
Appear these prisoners to answer for the multiple and grievous savageries of the species. How plead you, criminal?